Hey guys, it's Q&A Tuesday. Before I get into your questions, I told you guys I'm starting to get a lot of packages in the mail. I don't mind giving shout out to people. I have numerous companies that reached out to me and say, hey, plug this and plug that, we'll pay you and we'll do this. The minute I see somebody offer me payment for something, I decline it. In a very rare case, I may accept something and then take the money of the product and have it donated. I haven't had that instance yet. There are a couple of things that I do want to show you guys. The first package I received was from a gentleman by the name of Simon from the United Kingdom. And he sent me a coin. And he writes, Dear Roman, I've been watching your videos for quite a while now, and I always find them very informative. I've also recently started following you on Instagram. I enjoy seeing the variety of watches you have access to, the insight and honest opinions you provide about the watch industry. Thank you. I've only recently gotten into collecting watches, with Tag Heuer being my gateway watch before going into purchasing my Rolex Daytona and more recently a Cartier Santos. The watch wish list is forever expanding though. Oh yeah, I can certainly understand that. On your Q&A episode 106, you took the time out to thank the law enforcement. I know that many of the uniformed and military services are close to your heart. We live in a very polarized times, and it can be unpopular and sometimes dangerous to come out and support the law enforcement agencies. And I stand behind everything that I said in that video. I often feel like you guys are my family, and if I have something to say or share with you that maybe is outside of the watch realm, I feel that this is my place and my platform to do so. I am a police officer in Scotland. And though we have issues over here that can be divisive and difficult to resolve, I would say that our American counterparts have it much harder than us. There are so many complex issues that come into play during these troubled times, which it must be a nightmare to deal with. In no way do I defend the actions of bad apples. Justice for all must prevail and civil order maintain. This is just a quick thank you for your continued support of police and to thank you for the great content. I have enclosed a challenge coin that you might like. These were created for our unit by a colleague with the intent of exchanging them, mostly with foreign law enforcement officers that we occasionally deal with, who are generally better than us having wee gifts to exchange. I hope the small token of appreciation finds you well. If you ever find yourself in Scotland, feel free to look me up. Keep up the great work. Well, Simon, first of all, thank you very much. These type of tokens I don't take lightly. And to get something like this from as far away as Scotland is certainly very, very special. Special Crimes Division and Border Policing Command. Cool. So I'm obviously going to cherish this. I'm going to put this in my collection of all things police related. I have quite a few things, such as badges that you guys have sent me, as well as other coins. And I will cherish this. And again, thank you very much for supporting my channel. Stay safe out there, and hopefully one day I'll get out to Scotland. I would love to share a scotch with you in Scotland. Next, I got a watch. I haven't opened this yet, but I did do some reading about this. In a nutshell,
No, this is me in a nutshell. Help! I'm in a nutshell!
Zero West is a watch company out of United Kingdom. I went to their website, I checked out some of the stuff that they do, and I'm going to quote right from their website. It says, designing iconic British engineered watches that are historically and geographically linked to a moment in time. So they talk about cars, motorcycles, they talk about boats, they talk about World War II, they talk about planes, and I believe that this particular watch that they sent me, I believe, has to do with a plane, because I kind of read this letter, although I haven't opened the box yet. Rather than going into it, I'm just going to read you what these guys wrote to me. Dear Roman, it's my pleasure to present you the Spitfire S4 P9427 from Zero West Watches. The design of the watch is based off the airspeed indicator of an MKI Spitfire, the world's renowned fighter plane, which Britain produced in secret to fight the Nazis during the Battle of Britain. Supermarine, the company that manufactured the Spitfire, had their original factory in Eastleigh, Hampshire, on the south coast of Britain, just 30 miles from where Zero West had their headquarters in Emsworth. From this very factory, they produced the Spitfire P9427, which on the 28th of November 1940 was flown by a young Polish fighter, Sergeant Pilot Zygmunt Klein, who had fled the Nazi invasion of Poland some month before to fight for Allied forces. The engraved aluminum disc in the back comes from the recovered casing from the Merlin engine of Spitfire 9427, which was discovered 50 years later by a local fisherman. Rolls-Royce, who made the engines for Spitfire planes, also have their factory just 10 miles from Zero West. The wording on the back comes from Winston Churchill's famous speech in 1940, extolling the sacrifice that servicemen made for their benefit of the nation, and the coordinates reference the location P9427 was found. The S4P 9427 is powered by Swiss CTA 2824 movement. However, every other facet of the watch is designed right here in our headquarters in Emsworth by Andrew Brabin and Graham Collins, the company founders. The watches are assembled and pressure tested by a third-generation watchmaker in Portsmouth, UK. And the leather straps are handmade by Graham himself after learning how to craft them over the course of a year. I hope you like this piece as much as we enjoyed making it. Well, this certainly hits a nerve. I actually had 3 grandfathers that have fought in World War II. On my mother's side, my real grandfather, whom I've never met, passed away at the age of 22 in the war. He was injured in battle, taken back, and passed away from his injuries. The grandfather I actually knew was the gentleman that my grandmother, my mother's mom, has remarried, who also fought in World War II. And my father's father also fought in World War II. So this is a topic that's very near and dear to my heart. Obviously, these guys who fought, you guys know I'm Russian, so they fought on the Russian side, but nevertheless, they fought against Hitler. So same side as the gentleman that flew this plane. And it seems to me that you guys are taking an approach of what Romain Jerome did at one time or the other, except your stuff is much less expensive. I looked up the watch that you sent me, it's 2,200 British pounds. So you're taking a piece of history, you're actually putting it into a watch, you are tying it to a historical event, and at the same token, you are tying it to a geographical location, which is super freaking cool.
That's amazing.
I'm not going to get into much details, as you guys can check out their website and you can read about all of this on their website. Really cool and interesting stuff. Let's look at this watch. There's the booklet that comes with the watch, the picture of the famous plane, and all those other beautiful things. But again, I know you guys want to see this watch. And this is the first time I'm seeing this watch. Unmistakably a pilot's watch. Right off the bat, I'll tell you, size-wise, looking at this watch, I was expecting a much bigger watch. I'm glad it's not oversized, like, let's say, the IWC Big Pilot, which makes this watch practical to wear. Different use of material and different tones. Absolutely love that. You have a multitude of colors on this watch, yet it's not too loud, right? I don't know what the concept behind the red and gold crown is, but I can tell you it looks pretty cool. If I had to guess, can mimic the eject button. Again, design of the dial is absolutely awesome. Unmistakably a pilot watch, unmistakably a military watch. Love what you've done with the bezel. It's kind of like here, but not here. The attention is certainly in the watch, but the little details on the side of how this bezel is done and it carries over to the case. I love that. Let's see how well your guy has done on the strap. I love the fact that the owner himself handmade these straps. I mean, that to me, that's pretty awesome if you ask me. Let's look at the back, and this is what you guys discussed on the letter. So there it is. There's the plane, there's the model of the plane, and there's the famous quote from Churchill. The various finishes and the parts of the case, I absolutely love, and I love the fact that it accents the different parts of the watch. You have the lugs that sort of fitted into the case. It feels like the lugs are literally stuck inside the case on both sides like that. Love the two-tone finish in the back. The fact that this is black, it accents what's in the middle, and that's what's important. Kudos on the tank buckle, but again, that's a personal thing. You guys know I don't like deploying buckle that they tend to dig into the side of my wrist. Let's give you guys a gauge on size. So it's more or less the same size. I didn't look up how many millimeters exactly, but the way the looks of it, it looks like a 41, maybe a 42 millimeter watch, which is, again, it's large enough, but it's not too large. I love the big pilots from my WCs, but they're just too large for me to wear. Let me see how comfortable this watch is. So here it is on the wrist. It's as comfortable as any other 42 millimeter sports watch that I have worn on a leather strap. The leather tends to be a little bit tough, but this watch is new, I'm assuming. So I'm sure once the leather gets worn in a bit, it'll be a bit more comfortable. But nevertheless, it's very light, comfortable on the wrist, I have to say. I'm going to tell you guys a couple of things. Number one, I like this watch. Number two, the fact that you guys went with an ETA movement with this watch, you theoretically made this a fancier watch by saying, hey, we have a Swiss movement. With all the innovations and everything else you've put into these watches, I almost feel like to make it more authentic, that at some point you should come out with a British-made caliber or your own caliber actually made in the UK. Geographically maybe tied to something or some piece of horological history from the UK. You guys have that as well. But the gimmick side, you get an A+. Again, Romain Jerome did this with the Titanic watch, with the Moon DNA watch, with that Volcano watch, which I can never pronounce the name of it. Ikalagawagawa, something else, right?
Today, Junior?
But you're pricing this at $2,200, where right out the door, I think the Romain Jerome Titanic watch, upwards of $20,000, gives you the upper hand, and hands down, I gotta be honest with you, it's a better looking watch, right? Would love to see some of your other stuff live, some of your other models that were modeled after something else. But the concept is great, the watch looks good, it's a comfortable watch. We know the movement that's in there. It's a quality movement. This watch will keep on ticking. For any of you guys that are interested in these watches, again, I'm not selling them, nor am I promoting them. I'm simply plugging these guys on a good idea. I think they did a great job. Their website is zerowest.watch. That's pretty cool. It's not a .com, it's a .watch. Check out their gallery while you're on there. That's some really cool historical stuff on there. You did indeed do a great job. If it sucked, I would tell you. All right, so that's enough for mail time. This is a Q&A, so I am going to answer some questions. First question comes from Irving. Roman, big fan of your show and your channel. Thanks for all that you do in providing us normal people a glimpse into the world of how you think. Well, thank you. And watch collectors are not normal as we're often dubbed. We're almost dubbed as nutcases. It takes a watch nut to understand a watch nut, so I wouldn't dub us as normal. My question is in regards to trade shows, specifically international ones. How do dealers like yourself typically bring inventory into these shows? I watched a couple of your trade show videos, and it perplexes me how dealers have hundreds of thousands, if not millions worth of inventory sitting in a showcase during these trade shows. How are the watches transported? Is there some kind of special insurance that is usually needed for these? And how do you get past immigration without being asked a million questions? Sorry if this has been asked before, but really curious to know. I think this may have been asked before, but I'll quickly answer anyway. It's actually very, very simple. None of us, including myself or any of my staff, carry anything on us. This is done via an armored service. There are various services out there, Branks, Malcolm, Ferrari Express, etc., etc. If the show happens to be overseas, a lot of these armored service companies have a customs broker that deals with customs on premises, and it's just a question of submitting a boatload of paperwork. I actually have a dedicated person that does that here, although she hasn't been busy lately because we haven't been traveling. And of course, we are insured. The armor service is fully insured to the value in that report, and while we're at the show, we are insured ourselves. So believe me when I tell you, there's nobody out there bringing hundreds of thousands of watches on their person anywhere. It all gets transported. It's a small price to pay for security, but A, I couldn't physically carry all that stuff with me, and B, why would I throw a bunch of expensive watches into a suitcase and not carry that with me? That would just be stupid. Hope that answers your question. Next question comes from a gentleman by the name of Tony. Hey Roman, long time viewer here and really enjoy your thoughtful insights and honest opinion. Thank you. How big is the Swiss watch market in Asia compares to North America and Europe? I've heard that Hong Kong buys more Swiss watches than all of the United States combined. I also heard 80% of Swiss watches in Hong Kong are purchased by visiting Chinese. Can you verify that? You also have a branch and office in Hong Kong and visit the city regularly. How much business do you do in Hong Kong compared to US? I was in Singapore not too long ago, quickly noticed everybody and their grandmother wearing a Rolex. And the same holds true when I was in Hong Kong. While I love and collect Swiss watches, I've yet to see the same excitement in the US. I know I'm generalizing, but do Asians like collecting Swiss watches more than Americans? Thank you so much for answering my questions. Best regards, Tony. Well, you're not generalizing. You have to look at the sheer amount of people. So if America's population today is 330 million roughly, right? Mainland China is 1.5 billion. I think it's even more at this point, Ian, if you want to put up those stats to correct me. It's a numbers game, right? If let's say the Chinese market has 5 times the people that United States has, do the math, right? Without generalizing, you have to kind of also look at the people that live in certain regions, right? Take Russians, for example. When Soviet Union finally fell apart and people started making money hand over fist and things of that nature, if you were an average Joe that was just getting by and all of a sudden you won the lottery, what's the first thing you're going to get out there and do? 99 out of 100 times, you're going to go buy Ferraris, a fancy house. Whether you're Asian or whether you're Russian or wherever else you may come from, whenever there's an area where there's new money, there's always an explosion in the luxury goods sector. Why? Because people are earning to spend this money. It's the new money concept, right? There's a lot of that going on in Asia. China has kind of relaxed their communist rule, and there's a lot of millionaires and billionaires in China right now. A lot of it is new money. As far as Hong Kong is concerned, Hong Kong is a huge duty-free hub, right? And Hong Kong is a shopping mecca. And our office in Hong Kong basically serves as a hub for people to be able to stop in, pick up a watch, for somebody to drop off a watch we may have bought, etc. Hong Kong is accessible to all the other Asian countries, and the main country is exactly that, mainland China. But mainland China would be the #1 shopper there, 100%. And last but not least, you talked about Rolex. Well, Rolex is the #1 selling brand. It's the most popular brand. It's up here. I've said it before, where number 2 is down here. Rolex is a first money watch. I mentioned that before as well. So look, at the end of the day, it doesn't matter where you go. If you are paying attention to watches, odds are you're going to see a Rolex on most people's wrists. Hope that answers your question, but in reality, the answer to your question was actually in your question. Here's the next question from Kyle. Hey Roman, thanks once again for fielding my question. I'm curious about product acquisition in the secondary market. Let's take Rolex as an example. 1, if you had to guess, what percentage of Rolex ADs in USA knowingly and regularly sell off products to great dealers like you? Is that first transaction awkward at all? How do you know you're not encroaching on another great dealer's territory, quote unquote? Very easy question. 100% of all Rolex dealers deal with gray market dealers. And that's just the plain truth. If you're not dealing with the gray market and you are a dealer, you will not survive. They need guys like us in order to be able to turn the type of product that they need to turn in order to be successful. How far they're willing to go is really up to a particular dealer and how busy they may be. But there's no dealer out there that can sell out on his own, considering that the world of internet exists and has existed for many years already. How do I know you're not encroaching on another great dealer's territory? Odds are you are, because the AD is not going to work with just one great dealer. It's going to work with quite a few. Number two, are Rolex ADs outside of the USA more or less likely to deal with great dealers? Does it work more or less the same in every country? It does work more or less the same in every country. And again, there will be outliers. If you are a Rolex store in Hong Kong, you may get enough retail business to sustain yourself in a very, very busy location, or if you're in New York or wherever you may be, right? Those that, let's say, towards the middle of the country or somewhere that are not in this busy of a spot, it all becomes a numbers game of how much they can sell to retail clients versus great dealers. And don't forget, a lot of times these ADs don't even know they're selling to a great dealers, because there are plenty of great dealers that are out there that will come in and perpetrate as a retail customer to buy whatever they want to buy, right? We don't do that. People know who we are, and we're very transparent. And anytime I deal with a great dealer, I will let them know that they're dealing with a great dealer, because at the end of the day, we can hurt an AD by having their watch show up somewhere on the internet and then Rolex coming after them and trying to take their line away. So I'm very conscious of that fact, and I will never set up a great dealer, per se. I'll go out to a Rolex dealer that I know, and I will only buy a watch from them, and they know that whatever watch I buy from them is going to end up on a retail client wrist rather than on Instagram, some sort of a Facebook group, et cetera, because you have to protect your ADs, and that's what makes them want to work with you more likely than some Joe Schmo off the street, if that makes sense. I'm going to quickly address a question from DK. I actually discussed this question in another video that we did, which was the market update that I did with Adrian. And I touched upon the 5711, but I felt it was still good to point out another thing based on your question. Hey Roman, hope you're well. Here's another question that has been baffling me. I recently purchased one of the last 2020 5711 white dials. Much to my surprise, it had the updated 330 SC hacking seconds movement as opposed to the widely produced 324 SC. Even the dealers didn't pay much attention to this important upgrade. I believe there are only a handful of these produced since the upgrade happened in July 2019 and it discontinued in February 2020. Given the historical upgrade and the scarcity of this piece, why has this not been appreciated? And this is the point I wanted to bring out. I discussed on the last video in regards to the 5711, in regards to it being discontinued or not, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And I mentioned this fact in that video. The reason I wanted to bring this up again is because this is the kind of stuff that collectors do look for, and this is a good detail to note. So let's say the watch was discontinued in 2020, and halfway through 2019, this is the upgrade that has happened. This would make this a very, very rare watch, but 20 to 30 to 40 years from now. People will recognize that today, but you will not necessarily see a bigger value behind it, or that particular watch with that movement jump up in value tremendously over its counterpart. But 20 to 30 to 40 years from now, this would equate to those Rolexes that, that had a double Swiss dot, or those Rolexes that can only turn tropical from year 69 to 70, for example. It's those minute details that collectors look for, but again, on watches that are already 30 to 40 to 50 years old. And whether or not this minute detail is going to be kept in the books, as I call it, or kept in the limelight by dealers and collectors such as yourself, again, only time will show.
We've already agreed that having information about the future can be extremely dangerous. Even if your intentions are good, it can backfire drastically.
But it is a good point that you brought up. This is the kind of stuff a collector should look for. It's usually the physical appearance rather than the internals that drive that price up more, but nevertheless, it's details like this that will in turn count much further down the line. So DK, I appreciate this question. I wanted to highlight it once more outside of what we discussed in the market update episode with Adrian. I'm going to take one more question before I get out of here. And before I do, guys, remember, email your questions to me. I'm starting to venture out in different things like real watches, real people, real stories. You guys are sending in videos, and great, and I really, really appreciate that. But this is our core. This is your show right here, Q&A. So keep emailing those questions to romansharf@luxurybazaar.com, and I'll try to get to as many as I can. Rahit writes the following. Roman, let me start by saying I absolutely love your channel. I started following your videos when you had just a few thousand subscribers, and I'm thrilled to see you grow. Your authenticity, humility, and knowledge is inspiring. Thank you very much for that. I'm a young collector with a few pieces. I wear and enjoy all of my watches, but at the same token, as you say, like to see them appreciate. Love the fact that you wear your watches. Wear your watches, guys. They're meant to be worn. A few pieces I enjoy currently include the Black Seamaster on rubber and the blue Datejust fluted Jubilee and a 2019 Batman. I'm looking to get a Daytona next, and I just watched a video with Bob, and he's referring to the $5 million Rolex. Here's my question. Given that $11 is so sought after and rare, what is your take on the current generation and its future potential? Are the lower production dials in the lineup, and how does it want to identify them? I've been offered the following, pick attached, and I wonder if it is such a piece. I would love to hear your thoughts on this. P.S. I'm Indian, currently living and enjoying the beautiful country of Vietnam. I'd love to have a drink and talk watches with you when it all is over. Vietnam is a wonderful country with many watch enthusiasts as well, so do visit us sometimes in the future. Look forward to hearing from you and keep up the fantastic work. Would love to visit Vietnam. Actually, Vietnam is an up-and-coming hot watch market. I do a lot of business with Vietnamese dealers, usually out of Hong Kong, but with all these shows and being canceled, it's been kind of slow. So it goes back to the last questions that I just answered. You would think this new Daytona is technically the next $11. You won't know. Now, if they come out with this watch and a year later they can discontinue it, then yes, that would be the one. But again, you're only going to reap the rewards a long time from now. As I mentioned earlier, it's those subtle details. It's the fact that there's only so many 11 JPSs out there. It was the fact that there's only so many known cherry dial JPSs out there and lemons and so on and so forth. It's the same thing. You have to look back to be able to predict the future, so to speak, to sort of figure out a trend. And you have figured out the trend. The problem is that you're not at a point where you have to worry about that. You will never know, because they may continue making this particular Daytona with this particular dial for the next 30 years. How collectible is it going to be then? And remember, even the collectible pieces that are out there, and this is something I discussed in the video I did with Adam Menta, even the collectible pieces out there, they made gazillions and millions of them. What narrows down the pool is time. And that time narrows down the following. It narrows down how many watches actually survived. It narrows down how many of them are actually in all original condition, right? And that's what makes those watches more scarce. And when you get into situations where, hey, we know this particular dial was only made for 2 years, or this particular version of the bezel was made for only so many years, that narrows it down even further and gives you a rare watch. You also have to understand innovation. A lot of the older stuff, it was improvements, right? They made a particular dial, the lume didn't work out, it kept melting or something happened or changed the color of the dial. In their eyes, that was a flop. So they went and fixed it a year later or 2 years later, sometimes 10 years later. Every time they make a new version of a watch, it's usually some sort of an improvement. And lately, as technology has been so great, it's really not an improvement. It really becomes more of a variation, right? Because how much more can one improve, right? The Rolex Oyster case was made in 1926, right? It has been improved on ever since. But we're now at a point where there's really no more improvement necessary. So a lot of these rare collectible watches resulted as of a watch or a dial or whatever it might be being improved, a better bracelet, a better bezel, a better dial, a better finish of the dial that won't fade, right? Right now, they've gotten to a point where there's not a single modern Rolex out there that you can take where the dial is going to fade or turn tropical on you, because they've already fixed all those issues. And it's all those watches that prior to the fixes that have become more collectible. There's so little of them out there. What you did do right is you picked the watch. You picked the Daytona, the #1 selling watch of all time, the #1 most collectible watch of all times, the most desirable. So you can't really go wrong there. But if you're going to look in modern watches for something that's going to have 30 to 40 years from now, or 20 years from now even, it's impossible. You're not going to sort of guess. And you can't compare that to a lemon dial. You can't compare a watch and what it's going to be in 20 years to a watch that happened 50 years ago, if that kind of makes sense. So Rahid, this is really a great question. Gave me an opportunity to bring up a great topic. And again, at the end, say these things are expensive toys. They're not investment. Buy them, wear them, enjoy them, and don't worry about what they're going to be worth 20 to 30 years from now. Guys, that's it for me for today. I hope you enjoyed today's episode. Thank you so much again. Shout out to Zero West. Shout out to Simon. Thank you again so much for that coin. I will cherish that for a long time. And at the same token, you guys know what to do. This is the part where you hit the like button, you hit the subscribe button. If you're not a subscriber, and last but not least, you share this with your friends you think may enjoy this content, because this is what helps my channel grow organically. And I'll see you guys next Tuesday.